Hello and welcome to Calibre Conversations, our online book festival where we chat to a range of authors in the hope of introducing you to books to add to your reading list and get you enjoying more books in National Year of Reading. My name is Emma and I'm delighted to be joined by award-winning author A.M. Dassu, whose books include Boy Everywhere, Kicked Out, Fight Back and more recently Wild Journey. Her books inspire empathy and a call to action for kindness and inclusion and have a really powerful message that we're all stronger when we stand together as a community and also learn from each other. So first of all, hello and welcome, Az.
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited to be chatting to you today and to hear more about your writing. But I just kind of want to start off, if I may, just to find out a little bit more about your background.
I should have always tried to become an author, but I became really lazy as a teenager. And even though I should have done a degree in English, I decided that I didn't want to write an essay every week. And after I graduated in economics, I also decided I didn't want to work in economics. So I could not make my mind up. So I ended up working in project management and marketing. And it was only after I had my children and I became a parent helper in one of their schools. And obviously we were always going to the library, reading books together, etc. But I was helping in some swimming lessons in my son's class. And one of the boys would, every week after swimming, put on his socks first. And he'd do that every week, and I'd tell him, look, you're going to get really wet socks through your trousers, etc. Put them on last. He wouldn't listen. And I started calling him Soggy Socks. And he is the reason I accidentally became an author, because I went home one day and I wrote a book about soggy socks and I read it to my children and they absolutely loved it. And by the second and then third book that I wrote, and their response to them, I realized that this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I had so many regrets about not doing this earlier, until I realized that actually I use all of those skills that I had gained earlier in life. So for example, you know, as an author, you have to manage it is essentially a project because you have to write it in a certain time, you have to edit it in a certain time, you have to deliver things to certain dates. So I'm constantly using those skills as a project manager. And then now as an author, you're expected to market your books, go on social media, talk about them, do interviews like today. And again, you know, those are skills that I use from my marketing experience. And I really sort of understand how a product needs to be marketed and, you know, how it reaches its audience. So in hindsight, I guess it's a really good thing that I have those skills and that I do bring those skills. Like a lot of authors will sometimes just be creators. So they just write. So they don't understand the business side and they can struggle then with the expectations. So I guess that's helped me because I do really understand what a publisher needs. So yeah, all is not lost.
I love that. It's a great story, and particularly as you know, it's now feeding into your career as an author.
Yeah, I also say to young people that what I'm trying to tell you is that you don't have to get things right the first time. It's absolutely okay not to know what you want to do. It's okay that you might have to restart again. And I have done that, and I found something that I love that I want to do for the rest of my life. So it's absolutely fine if you think that you want to do something and then halfway through your life you change your mind.
And you mentioned obviously writing the first few sort of books for your children, and kind of I guess they were your first critics, were they, in that respect as well? So what was your first kind of published book, and where did the idea for that story come from?
So my first published book was Boy Everywhere. And that again was sort of accidental because I had no intention to write a novel. I didn't know how to write a novel. But we were supposed to I had a critique group, which is basically a group of writers that criticize and give feedback when you're writing. And I was supposed to submit a chapter the following week. And I was watching a news interview about the refugee crisis. Now, this is back in 2015. And we'd heard for the past 5 years or so was how this refugee crisis was terrible, how so many refugees were coming to our country, taking our jobs, taking our NHS beds, and they were coming here for a better life. And in this interview, two men were stood in front of a tent in a muddy camp with nice clothes on and smartphones in their hands, and they were talking about what they left behind. And in that moment, it was like a light bulb moment where I realized that could be me, that if, bombs were to fall on my street, I would run out of my front door with a smartphone in my hand and my Nike trainers, and I would become that refugee. And instantly I saw my main character, Sammy. I knew, because I had boys, the same age, and I knew that he was going to love football, that he was going to be middle class from Syria, but he'd go to an English speaking school. He would, love playing on his PlayStation with his friends, eating burgers and pizza, etc. That somebody that every one of us in the UK, US could relate to and see themselves in him and see how easily any one of us can become refugees. So I very quickly wrote that story because I really believed that it could sort of change minds and maybe open up a conversation about how the people that were shown on the TV aren't that different to us. And that's how Boy Everywhere was born.
And it actually leads me on to because it's what you brought up there as some really pertinent points for what you do also outside of being an author as well. So you're a really active champion of ensuring all voices are heard, supporting authors and encouraging diversity in writing and publishing. And even in January 2017, you won the International We Need Diverse Books YA Mentorship Award as well. So what would you like to see? This is quite a question because there's going to be more than one thing, I'm sure. But what would you like to see change in the publishing industry to make it easier for underrepresented voices to have a platform and to get those books into the hands of readers?
I think we really do need, in order for real change to happen, we need to see more diversity and underrepresented staff members in publishers and within book selling as well, because it's understandable that when you've only sort of read a certain type of book or been exposed to something, that's going to be your comfort read or something that you engage with better or you want to read more of. And so when you've got lots of editors who are buying books that aren't that diverse or that don't connect easily with everything, they're only going to maybe their choices are going to be limited. And if you've got different people with disabilities, of different backgrounds, religions, from different parts of the world, etc., or experiences, family backgrounds, etc., you are more likely to have people who connect with those books and want to buy them. And so then you just get a really, and they also, because they've experienced those things or have an understanding, they're able to see, the authenticity. So how realistic that book feels, how true it feels, and they're able to market it with more passion. So I think the real change needs to come from within publishers, and then it will filter down. But until then, I think we're going to keep seeing the same sort of struggles.
Well, that's a great answer, and we're sort of picking up from some of the things that you've said in the strands of that conversation there as well. So we're really passionate at Calibre about our members being able to see themselves represented in books, and for people to empathise with others through the power of stories. Because it's not just about people seeing; it's about us as readers reading and understanding other people as well. And that way you learn, and you become more empathetic too. So we run an Inclusive Voices short story competition each year, and this year we're not only delighted that you're one of the judges, but also that we're teaming up with Empathy Lab. So the theme of this year's competition is to write an empathy-led story. So with your huge experience in this area, do you have any hints and tips for any children who might want to enter the competition on how to write a story with empathy at its heart?
One of the main tips I'd say is that you want to make your character relatable, and you want your reader to know your character before you throw them into the deep bits of trouble. But also you want to, empathy is basically where you don't just feel sorry for somebody, but you really can see and feel what that person's feeling. So you want to write with senses as much as you can. So, you're not just showing what they're seeing, but what they're hearing, what are they feeling in their chest? Are they panicking? What are their thoughts? All of those things build your character and help your reader really experience that scene as the character. that's one of the things I love about writing, because there's no other form like it. Like you get films where you watch a character, pull out orange juice from the fridge, pour it, you'll hear it, but you don't taste it, you don't smell it. And those are things that you can really experience in writing as well. So yeah, all of those things would help you write with empathy.
Oh, fantastic. That's some great tips. So I hope people take that on board, and hopefully we'll see some great stories out of that. And thank you very much. So one of your amazing stories, which tackles racism in football and is a masterclass in empathy writing, is Boot It. And that's the book you were asked to write for World Book Day in 2023. Can you tell us a little bit about this book? And also, was there a reason particularly that you chose football as the activity to centre the story around?
I just love how it can bring people together. And I remember this moment I went to Kenya, and we were going to the safari. So we were literally in the middle of nowhere. We had driven miles and miles away from the city, and there was just dirt roads everywhere. And then all of a sudden we saw two boys playing football on the side of the road. And one of them was wearing a Manchester United t-shirt. And I was just, my jaw dropped. I was like, how does he know about Manchester United? And back then, this is a very long time ago because I'm old. This is like in 2003. And back then we didn't have social media the way that we do now. So it really was like, wow, how does he know? And it just showed me how global and connecting football can be. So I wanted to use the spirit of that to bring people together. And so Boot It is essentially, the book is about wanting to do something and being made to feel like you don't belong in that space. So whether you, want to be an astronaut, a footballer, or whether you're a boy that wants to, dance and in the ballet, etc. And if you're told, or if you're a girl and you're told you can't become the top engineer, there are so many stereotypes that we're faced with even now today. And if you're made to feel like you don't belong in a space and you really want to do something, this book hopefully will inspire and empower young readers to feel like, yes, you can. You've just got to keep going and ignore the horrible, nasty voices that are around you, and, keep going towards your goal. And that's what my characters do in in Boot It. They want to get on the football team, and they work really hard to get there. They do make it. And then the captain of that team says really awful words to them. Some of them are racist, and he makes them feel like they don't belong. And he tells them pretty much that they don't belong. He says to Sammy, "You're just a refugee. You're not meant to be on this team. You're only here because the coach feels sorry for you." Things like that, and that really breaks Sammy's spirit. But essentially, they say to him, and when they go to the coach says, "Oh, just ignore him. It's banter." And they think to themselves, no, actually, we're not going to ignore it. We're going to do something about it. And they sort of fight back in their own way, and they do well. But it was also inspired by the news, because all of my books were inspired by the news. And one of the news pieces a few years ago was about banter in sports, where a cricketer had spoken up about the racism that he experienced in the changing rooms. And when he spoke up, that encouraged like footballers and rugby players, etc., to speak up as well. And basically it looks at banter in sports as well, like where we can say that words, they're just words, but actually they can have an impact. They can break your confidence. And bullying isn't something that you can just easily ignore. Ultimately I use football to sort of inspire, empower, and give you the courage to speak up and keep going.
I love the fact that, using sport and football in particular, it's a universal language, isn't it? So if you have a football, when you have a group of people, everybody knows what you need to be doing. You don't have to speak, if you're all speaking different languages, it doesn't matter, because you all have the same goal in mind, don't you? Literally the same goal in mind. So I love that. It's something people can come, as you say, it's a real sport that can unify people, and that was really important too. So brilliant. Yeah. So that's one, definitely read that one, because that's absolutely brilliant. So I just mentioned that it's National Year of Reading already in the UK this year. And that's all about trying to address the decline in reading for pleasure amongst children and adults. As part of that, we're looking to encourage and introduce as many people as possible to different books and authors, and inspire a habit of reading for pleasure. So with that in mind, can we ask you what book or experience even, or story made you a reader?
What I noticed was I love books with pictures. I love nonfiction. So one of my favorite things was my illustrated encyclopedia. I loved facts. but I couldn't read novels. And it's really interesting when I look back now. I had this like collection of classics on my bookshelf, and I would open them. I would take them out, look at the cover, open it, maybe read a few sentences, maybe a paragraph at most, feel very overwhelmed and put it away. And it was only when I went to secondary school that when I started reading class reads with my English teacher, and we were asked to read aloud, that I became quite engaged. And I remember reading Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which was about racism in the deep south of America. And I was really annoying. I would read out loud in an American accent. And I remember my friends, my classmates would be like, oh no, when I was asked to read out loud, because I literally couldn't help myself, because the voice is so good in that book. It's so strong. You can't help it. And I loved, there's another one called Brave New World, which was written in the 1940s. And that was old for me back then. And I was fascinated that this man had written this book that predicted the future and things that were happening, at that time in my life, which, he had predicted like 50 years before, like test tube babies, which was happening at my time. He'd also predicted flying cars, which hasn't happened yet, but it's going to in about 10 years. So, I think books that sort of encourage discussion really, really engaged with me. And I remember them. And I guess deep inside me, I wanted to write books that would encourage discussion. The fact that people think that, you were an author because you loved reading from the start. I did like books, but I found text overwhelming. And that's okay. I didn't ever in my life think that I could write something this thick. It's a lot of words. It took a lot of time, but I didn't think I was capable of that, because at one point I couldn't even read past the first page. So I guess it's about timing and finding the right subject that makes you passionate, that makes you want to read, or also makes you want to write. It's all about something that you engage with. And I guess you have to try a lot of things in order to find that sometimes.
Well, that's a perfect link into our next question, actually, because that's what's really important about reading. It's about finding your way of reading. And as you've just said, reading aloud, that was something that you enjoyed and made you engage with the book as well. And obviously at Calibre, we're really passionate about audiobooks, because that's the format that our members need to access reading. So it's really great that your books are available in audio too. Do you have any input into that, the creation of your books into audio? And what do you think the audio experience can bring to a story?
I wish. So I really wanted to read A Wild Journey. And I did ask my publisher, but the audio company, they have to have experienced actors or whatever. I have been lucky though, because with all of my books, I've been able to choose who I want to narrate. So I get a selection, not from a wide range. I can offer, suggestions, but of their suggestions, I get to sort of listen to their samples of their reading. And then I can say, look, this person is appropriate. I think this person will be better. And in one case, Bramadeo, who read Boot It, I wanted him to do Wild Journey, and I recommended him for Wild Journey, but I think they went with somebody else. So yeah, I do have some input there. But I think audiobooks are brilliant because they really bring a book to life. And you can... you can see how someone intends to say something. Sometimes, even when I'm reading, I'll sometimes read something and then I have to go back and reread it because I realize I haven't read it in my head in the right way or whatever. So with audio, you get to hear it, the way it was intended first time. And, even with my narrators, I will give them, I'll record certain words, because obviously in my books, I will have other languages featuring. So I will then, record and show them how it's pronounced. So, even hearing that can help an audio reader, okay, that's what that sounds like. So yeah, I think they're a really brilliant way of reading books, actually, because then you aren't having to focus on the words. You can hear the story and perhaps even imagine it. So it's beautiful.
That's what you've just said about it brings the story to life. It's another way of getting into seeing the story a bit differently as well. So for you, when you've listened to your audiobooks, Do you sometimes think, oh, I wrote that, because it's such a, or do you think, does it make you experience it in a different way? So you think, wow, that really sort of brought the character to life or whatever. Is it a different experience for you from reading to listening to it?
Yeah, it is, and I love listening to it. So even when I'm working, when I write a book, I will give it to my daughter to read to me. And when she reads it out to me, I hear it differently and I'm able to edit better because I can see how it came across, how she read it. I can see how she understood things. So for me, it's a really important process in the way I write as well.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. So really, audio is the way that you progress with your books, and that in terms of going forward. Fantastic. So your latest book, which we've just mentioned, is also in audio, which is Wild Journey. It's a collection of stories that are linked by a common theme. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, and also how that migration of starlings helped shape the stories?
I was asked to write a story collection, and I thought, oh, yes, that'll be great. That'll be easy. No. And because they then said to me they need to be linked. And I thought, and they said with an object. I could not for the life of me think, what object am I going to put between each story? In each story, how does this work? And then they said, look, you've written a lot about journeys. How about the theme of journeys? And I thought, okay, that sounds really good. And then we were talking, me and my agent, and she suggested, what about birds as an object? And I thought, brilliant. So I went away, I did research, and I thought starlings, because they migrate from across the world, which would mean that I wanted initially because they're all over the world in every country, but I wanted to start in South Africa, go across Africa, and then down into Europe. And I couldn't, because in South Africa, they don't migrate. They're native. They stay there. But you do find them in Morocco and in Egypt and around the Sahara Desert, where they do migrate into Europe. And so, it just meant that I could use really exotic and different locations. So I could showcase different settings, different types of children. I also wanted to showcase different family backgrounds. So, you've got a character that has a carer family. You've got a boy in the forest with his dad who's divorced, etc. You've got Isabel in France who's got, a stepmom, etc. So, it just meant that I could completely explore different settings, different characters, different backgrounds, and then have animals in there too, which I loved because I've not done that before. In the first story, you've got starlings and you get to know the character of starlings and understand them better. And then they feature lightly in the other stories because otherwise it would have become quite repetitive. But they'll feature in a way where one of my characters found a starling's feather, or they saw flights of starlings going across the desert that led the way. And it's just such a beautiful way to connect them. And it helped me choose my locations as well. So that's how it worked out, and I'm really happy with it because it's also illustrated, so it's really lovely. It's different to anything I've done before.
It's such a clever story, and what's something that sort of left me with was that you explore what home means, so that what home is for different people in all of the stories. So actually, I just wanted to reverse that and then put that back onto you really, and say, can I ask you what home means to you?
I think for me, home is the people that I love. So it doesn't matter where you are. It really is about who you're with and what they mean to you. And whether that's, on the dining table in your school, or whether that's at home, or whether that's at your grandparents, or, anywhere you can find your people, and that can be home to you. For me, I think it's about finding the people that give you warmth and confidence and understand you, and wherever that might be. It may not be in the house that you live in all the time. Sometimes it's not for everyone, but wherever that may be.
I think we can all resonate with that one. That's great. Again, along with your fiction novels, as we've kind of mentioned, your love of non-fiction and, encyclopedia when you were younger, etc. So you've also contributed to children's non-fiction titles and written picture books on Ramadan and Eid. Do you have to adapt your writing style and processes when you're sort of writing all these different types of books? And is one harder than the other to produce, or all kind of the same in your processes?
I do have to adapt. I mean, for me, I know I shouldn't say this to picture book authors, but for me, a picture book is really a break, and it's joyous because it's short. And I think after working on a novel, so at one point I was working on 8 books in a year, and it was really crazy because one minute I was, writing, drafting a novel, then I was editing another novel, then I was writing a picture book and a nonfiction. And it worked out well because you get really exhausted. Drafting a book, you're researching a lot, you're using a different part of your brain, and you're worrying about, accuracy, etc. Then you move on to picture books, and that's just shorter. And for me, a joy and a break because you can see the end. With a novel, you can't see the end when you're working on it. Sometimes it goes on for weeks, sometimes months. Whereas with a picture book, I can say, okay, I'm going to allocate half an hour to an hour, and then I'm done. I've done this draft. I can go back tomorrow, and it's done, and I've completed something, and it feels really good to complete something, as opposed to a novel where you're like, okay, I've completed 5 pages. Oh, and I'm crying. I've only got like 64,000 words to do. And with nonfiction, the good thing for me is because I approach my fiction, my novels, with the same accuracy as I would a nonfiction. For me, the process is the same. I do the same sort of research. I look for, I look for resources that will, if anyone asks me a question, I can back up with, and I'll make a list of books and quotes or whatever that I'm using. So for me, nonfiction is kind of similar, but obviously with nonfiction, again, it still is simpler because you work in spreads, like double pages. So again, you have completion, and it's just a break in that, although your book might be bigger, longer. It's like I've just finished a nonfiction book, which comes out in September. And all in all, it took, 6 months to write, but I was sending back chapters at a time. So again, it was smaller chunks. So yeah, it all varies, but it helps and it's nice to work on different things for that reason.
Well, coming away from your massive workload at the moment, I want to just delve into a little bit of finding out a bit more about you and what you might do actually, when you're not working, and what you do for sort of your hobbies and interests, and for you to find sort of pleasure and fun. So I read on your website that you're a real lover of good food, art, architecture and happiness. So with that in mind, and just to find out a little bit more about you based on kind of those themes, first of all, can I ask, what is one of your favourite foods to eat?
Burgers. Give me a chicken burger and chicken fillet burger any day.
That's great. Well, perfect. Yeah, good answer. Excellent. So next one is, do you have a favourite piece of art, or one that you would love just to talk and share about? Because there might be lots of different pieces of art that you like, but what's the one that stands out for you?
My daughter and I were talking about this just the other day, but we have a small square framed piece which has butterflies that I don't know what the word is, but when they're sort of 3D, so they've been cut out and lifted up. And so you've got sort of like 5 per line, and you've probably got 15, but they're all in different colors. And it's vibrant, like yellows and pinks, and it's just different colors, but not wholly, they're splattered. So they're white with splatter. And it's just a stunning piece of art. It was not very expensive. I think we just bought it randomly thinking, oh, this will look good in our hallway. But it is actually my favorite piece because it's just so stunning and vibrant. And then there's another piece that we have that I actually bought after I'd been to Venice, which is line drawing. So that's sort of like, my love of architecture. And it's a sketch of the sort of waterfront in Venice, one of the waterfronts. And you can see the, domed architecture and all the sort of like shutters and the canals and the little boats, gondolas, etc. So yeah, those 2 are my favorite at home.
Great. That's the other thing as well. So you can find art everywhere, can't you? So it's not, you don't have to go to some museums. There's art all over the place. So you just have to open your eyes and find it, don't you? That's a great answer. So do you have a favourite piece of architecture going on that as well?
I love Georgian architecture. I love it. I just love in London, when you just walk for ages and see different types of furniture, architecture. There's one street that I went by the other day, and it was just different periods. And I was like, what happened here? Was it all bombed? Because how have you got Edwardian architecture and then Georgian, and then you've got something that looks like it's from the 1970s. But I love Georgian. That's my most favorite.
Fantastic. And the last question, obviously, because you said, you're sort of a lover of happiness as well, as we all are. But I didn't want to ask that as a theme, because that there's quite a lot of things that probably make you happy. So I thought I'd bring it back to a reading theme and ask what book or author brings you reading happiness?
I love reading the Loki books. They just make me laugh out loud. They're so funny. I love seeing how Loki tries so hard to be good, but he's so bad. They do make me happy, and I love funny books.
So really just kind of looking to the future now. You've already mentioned that you've got a book coming out in September. So is it possible to have a sneak peek of like kind of what we might expect from that, or anything else that you might be working on as well that you want to mention?
So the one I'm working on two. So the one in September has just gone to print, and that's a nonfiction about racism. But it's not, it's not a sort of boring book where it's like, oh, this is what racism is. It's actually very interactive. It's very interesting. So it sort of gives real world examples, and it's for everyone. It's not just, it's for people who see it. It gives you tips on what you should do if you do see something happening. And because we are exposed to it everywhere now, on social media, on gaming platforms, it's really hard to get away. Like, bullying is everywhere. Whereas before, in my day, you could leave school and go home and nothing much happened after that. Whereas now, it can be ongoing for young people. So that's a book about racism and bullying. And then I'm at the moment writing a book for young people with special needs, so with dyspraxia, dyslexia, etc. And it's a story about a boy. So normally my characters start off, in a tense, anxious moment. That's how the book starts, and they gain confidence later. Whereas this one is a little bit too overconfident, bit full of himself, and he starts a new school, wanting to be the most popular boy, and things go drastically wrong. So I'm writing that at the moment, and that will be illustrated, and it will have the editing process will mean that people with special needs will find it easier to read. So my publisher wanted me to write a book that had themes for older children, but that people with reading ability that was younger could engage with. So at the moment I'm working on that, and that will come out, I think, later this year as well. I'm on deadline. It's
that sounds fantastic. I hope that comes out in audio if it's possible, if the format works, because that would sound brilliant for us.
I'll speak to my publisher and mention that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, it sounds, I could literally talk to you all day, but I can hear your deadlines sort of creeping up around the corner. So I just want to say, thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that we encouraged our listeners to discover your books if they haven't yet. I can thoroughly recommend them. They've got such a lasting impact, and most importantly, they left me wanting to change the world in whatever small way I can, which I always think is a lovely thing to take from a book. If you're a member of Calibre Audio, you can borrow Wild Journey and Boot It from our collection. And if you want to find out more about Az and her books, then visit her website at amdassu.com, where there are also really brilliant resources to accompany her books. And if you don't feel like you've learned enough about her from this interview, then she's also got really helpfully, she's added 19 random facts about herself on her website, so you can discover a bit more. There's some brilliant ones, and I'm going to tease you with one because we didn't cover this, but I think this is absolutely brilliant. So including the fact that Az is actually a magistrate and was sworn in at the age of just the tiny age of 26. It seems like a real young age. So she was one of the youngest magistrates in court at that time. So so just that's just a teaser. So go on and have a look at the others, because there's some great other ones there as well. But I want to leave you with that because I think that's it's just an absolutely fantastic accolade. That's as for me, you're just such an inspiration, and I hope everyone kind of discovers you and finds out more because of what you're doing and what you're bringing to not only reading and author and helping authors on their way as well, which is fantastic. So thank you. It just leaves me to say a really big thank you to you, Az, for joining us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everything that you do at Calibre. For me, it's inspiring, and yeah, I'm looking forward to telling people more about you.